And we are live and back in action. Welcome, Jacko. Welcome back.
Thank you, Natho. Good to be here.
So, as I mentioned on our story on the Red Hot show, we've changed our name again, guys. I'm sorry. It's third time's the charm. Still on the theme of redheads, and we will still refer to the big fella as Saucy, but we just figured it'd be a bit more well-rounded as the Red Hot show. So we're going to run with that. And it's been a few weeks. Big Sauce has been having a blast over in his motherland in Scotland. Had some very impressive rounds, I hear. And it's good to have him back in Australia and chatting all these important issues through as we get super close to the election. It's been a wild few weeks, and we're super excited to dive in to a bit of politics and also a good chunk of markets today. So I wanted to start today's show by going into a more high-level, general feelings about the last few weeks and where we might be heading as we get super close to what's easily probably the biggest event of the year, this election, if not the last, decade, depending on which way it goes. So I'll let Jacko kick things off today and give us where his head's been at and how he's feeling, and then we're just going to bounce off each other for a bit, and then we'll get into some more structured stuff. The Tim Waltz allegations that have broken, the Doug Emhoff video I did this week on his skeletons that sit in his closet, and then as I said, some market updates and some really cool investment opportunities that we want to elucidate a bit more that I've been speaking about for a while. So hope you guys enjoy. It's good to be back. And of course, we do have saucy sips as well after this general overview, so stay tuned for that. So welcome, everyone. Jacko, great to have you back. And let's get underway.
Indeed, my friend. General sentiment over the last few weeks, and g'day, everyone. Great to be back at it. It's been a big few weeks, so there's a lot of territory to cover. But Natho, you'll probably see a smile on my face for a fair bit of this epi. Reason being, momentum in my unbiased opinion, very much on the Trump train side. I think you're not a big poll man. I am a big poll man. He's had a meteoric surge in the polls.
Market, 13% now. He's clear, isn't he?
Yeah, he has a significant lead, I would call it now. Not toss-up territory, more a significant lead, according to probably the most renowned pollsters and prediction outlets. Betting markets are always a very good indicator of where things are, and I think currently, as it stands, at Trump $1.72 favourite, plays Kamala the $2.10. So that's a bit of a gap that's emerged of late. But just generally, I think why I'm pleased, Natho, anyone that's listened to the first few episodes could probably tell who my dog is in this fight. But the reason I'm pleased is I think the American voters, slowly but surely, are understanding that in Donald Trump, it's a very known, very familiar agenda. And, they've also had the benefit of 4 years under the Trump administration. It wasn't the doomsday scenario that the Dems were pitching to the public and still do, which I find a little uneasy. But yes, I think his policy outline's been really clear. As we know, Kamala has been exceptionally flaky with the public about what her position is on various matters. I think Kamala, truthfully, doesn't have an authentic bone in her body, and people are starting to understand that can they trust this person? And not only from a competency standpoint, but also a personal standpoint. Trump's flaws are very transparent. Everyone knows what type of guy he is. But in a way, I think that works in his favor. And I think it's the devil versus the terrifying
devil.
Exactly. So look, in my eyes, I think the Trump camp would be feeling very good about where things are at the moment. It is a momentum game. He is the best closer in modern US political history. I think that's unquestionable now. And look, the Dems and the deep state keep throwing everything at him. Full kitchen sink treatment, media collusion, hit jobs, relentlessly. You've got Bill Clinton, Barack Obama on the campaign trail, not doing too well, but still on the campaign trail. And still, they'll just be scratching their heads because this man does not go away. 3 assassination attempts, every hit job under the sun, every allegation under the sun. And he stands tall, and I think he's in the clear lead. So, yeah, Nathan, feeling good about that. Excited about a possible second Trump term. The race is far from over. Many more twists and turns to come. But that's my general analysis on the political side of things. If anyone wants to hear about my golf rounds in Scotland, they can DM me privately. I'd be very happy to go shot by shot on how I fared. But yeah, look, it's really interesting. It's probably the most in our lifetime. We're 30, as our 14 listeners would know. But I think it is the most consequential election of our lifetime for sure. And I'm feeling pretty good about where things are, but I'm also feeling good about your meteoric rise, Natho, in the world of social media. I think anyone that knows you and knows your journey knows you're having a pretty big run at the moment. And for instance, I think last 3 weeks you've received more than 6.5 million views on Instagram alone for your content. Your following is, I think gained 20K in the space of 3 weeks, which, is again, just on that platform, and the types of people in your DMs. It's all happening. So maybe you want to let the public in on that one.
Yeah, echo all your sentiments thoroughly. But what I've really been impressed with the last month is, since going on the Jonesy show, Alex Jones, he keeps touching on this point that he's so impressed with the citizen journalistic efforts, and how every morning, seemingly, I mean, just this morning I sent you that piece from Ian Carroll, who's an awesome citizen journalist, who's just done another piece on Tampon Tim, or Tim Waltz, aka Tim Waltz. It really is mind-blowing now compared to 4 years ago, just how different the public consciousness is. I remember sitting there 4 years ago with you just before election, and we knew it was pretty important. We both still wanted Trump to win. Again, we recognize his flaws, but we both had the nous and intuition to understand how dirty and corrupt the other side was at that point. We knew that things weren't as they seemed, and certainly not as the media was portraying. And look, that was probably for most people a bit of a foreign concept back then, because this was I guess during COVID, but the truth-seeking and the penetration from citizen journalists wasn't occurring. It didn't exist. You were just instantly censored, or you were just called a loony if you managed to get through, if you're questioning science, questioning the mainstream narrative. And it is such a stark contrast this time round. And I sit there every morning and thoroughly enjoy putting these pieces together and knowing that these nasty individuals that have gotten away with these heinous acts for so long are just copping loss after loss after loss right on the chin. And there's nothing they can do about it. And it is so enjoyable. I mean, you shouldn't be spiteful in life or vengeful And it's not that from my end. It's full circle karma, if you will. You know, we sat there and copped. We knew things weren't right after the last election, and you know, there's no surprise the world's gone completely downhill since. So for me, my sentiments the last few weeks have been extremely positive, and it's been more in the air of that notion, the notion of this strength within the public consciousness. And now I find you can do some good journalism on something, and you're actually going to get a lot. Probably the majority will go, wow, yeah, no, that's a good piece, and I'm actually open to receiving that. Whereas if you go back even 2 years ago and you do some of the pieces of work we're doing, most people will call you a loony, and then you'll probably get your 30%, 20% that'll support you, and you know, hats off, good stuff, good piece of work. But now it just feels like so many people are actually doing their own research. They're informing their own decisions and their own worldviews, which is super exciting. And I just don't think the elite and the deep state, the cabal, whatever you want to call them, they never accounted for this. They never accounted for it. So really pleasing. As you said, we're not out of the woods yet. Anything can happen, but they can't put this in the bottle anymore. You know, there's too much strength and power in what's occurring in the public eye and public consciousness. So it's really exciting. So that'd be my sentiments for the last month, and more close to home with the followership and the support. Couldn't be more grateful. It's been crazy. Some of these pieces that we've put out have just gone absolutely gangbusters, and it's been cool to see a lot of people resharing, some people ripping it off, which hasn't been super enjoyable, but ultimately it is good because more and more people are seeing them. We may have done like 6 mil alone on my Instagram, but I can guarantee you we've done well over 100 mil views worldwide from all the resharing and the big names on X and other Instagram accounts that have reshared them. So it's really cool to sit here and, as we discussed only probably 3 months ago, actually have, I would say, a small hand in informing the public prior to this election and hopefully aiding in a good chunk of people's decision making, or at least changing their worldview slightly. So, yeah, really, really exciting, really happy, and keen to see how it all unfolds.
Yeah, well said, my friend. And I think just touching on that last point you made, you know, there's a lot of pride given the proximity of our relationship and how close we've been for a long time now. Yeah, I think I'm enormously proud of the work you're doing, and certainly, you know, believe that you deserve all the traction you're getting. I think I do think that what you're doing is having an impact. Not just the type of content you're releasing, and your commitment to truth seeking, which I think is one of the more noble pursuits in life, really. But more so, I actually just think you're teaching, you're helping as part of this movement, public consciousness rising movement. You are helping people think more critically, and that is something I'm quite passionate about. I think what's happening, a theme that's emerging in the modern day Western political spectrum, is we have two sets of people that are, I would say more divided than ever, certainly the last 30 years. And I would say that what you would associate as the left are far more trustworthy of legacy media. They're certainly more inclined to believe the headlines they read from, you know, what they would call trustworthy sources. And then, and so I'd call that the progressive movement, very, very much establishment now aligned. And, you know, the establishment tries to appease them and pander to them because they They like to help each other. But I would certainly call that the more brainwashed camp. It's not very polite, but that's certainly the way I think. And then I think modern day conservatism, and conservatism is such an unfortunate term, because it's not conserving anything anymore. It's actually, modern day conservatism to me is thinking more critically. It's being a bit more bold, to think, I'm not going to necessarily believe what I read, or I'm not necessarily going to believe something that the government says, or certainly the government's reasoning behind a policy. What are the motives? Challenge why things are happening. And I think, a large chunk of the conservative movement, certainly in the Gen Z and certainly in the millennial camps, is associated with that really noble endeavor to try to think through things a little more critically and educate yourself on why, instead of just blindly trusting the political class establishment, and going along. I would call it sheep, again, not very polite, but like sheep, just going along with the herd. So what you're doing to me is really important. You're clearly very much on the, and I know you don't like to be boxed in as a conservative. That's certainly not the way in which I would brand you. But I do think that conservatives mainly are the ones that are pushing this really important pursuit. So I'm in awe and really amazed by what you're doing, and I'm also encouraged by how people are reacting to it.
Thanks, mate. No, very, very kind words, and it's a good team behind us. You helped me with a lot of stories as well. It's all a big team effort, and it's a lot of fun. One little side point before we go into saucy sips on that notion around critical thinking is, if people are listening or they see this trimmed up in a reel, probably a common question in a lot of people's minds, well, how do you do that? How do you critically think? And I think one simple strategy now is to always be cognizant of what the majority of the media are saying about something. So a perfect example is the FEMA aid, excuse me, the FEMA aid after Hurricane Hurricane Helene and Milton. Trump made some sort of brash comments post Hurricane Helene, and without a doubt, I'd say, 99% of all media just lambasted him as propagating misinformation. Now, as soon as you see a buzzword like that thrown in a sort of collective manner against someone, or against a subject matter, instantly that has to raise questions. Like that's the first clue. The first clue is if the media is ever in I've lost the word here, but I guess it is in a uniform. What's the word I'm looking for? Aligned, or what's a synonym for
in concert?
They're all together.
Colluding. No, I can't. Uniform will do.
Uniform will do. That's the first clue, and you see it so often now because they just lean on their buzzwords. They've got their playbook of buzzwords that they use, and when you start to see that about used in big events, like they're really consequential events that have occurred over there recently, and they're big accusations from Donald. But that's got to raise the question in your mind and the alarm bell to go off and actually start to dig and figure out what's going on here. And that really is how it all starts. I think news is always going to be broken, and I would just caution people that are wanting to become a little bit more critical in their thought processes to observe those patterns a bit more carefully. and that's where it starts in my mind.
Well, yeah, Nathan. Just on that example you gave, let's unpack that a little bit, because here's how it played out. And you can fact check me, but I'm very confident that this is how it panned out. So yes, you're right. Trump rightfully critiqued the response of the Biden-Harris camp for what was a slow and under-resourced response to the natural disasters that have occurred. And then clearly the allegation was that actually a large portion of the FEMA funds that should have been available for the response were allocated towards illegal immigrants and their housing and their medical and, all of the above. And of course, the story became, which is true, by the way. Sorry, that is a fact. That
is a fact.
FEMA funds were allocated to.
That was gaslit.
Of course, it was gaslit. It was questioned by the
and it didn't exist. That's not what was happening.
But here's the fundamental problem: is that the story became the tone and tenor of Trump's critique, not the appalling response and the government's responsibility to look after its people and how they failed on that responsibility because of the pace of the delivery, because of the efforts and the resources allocated to the recovery effort. It is a travesty that you can politicize an event like that and use it for legacy media. Use it as let's just attack Big Daddy Donald again. It's pathetic. I don't swear often, but I was very tempted to drop a few F-bombs in that little passage because, I find it insufferable. And I think that's the type of, if I'm not mistaken, that's the type of example you're referring to. How could that possibly be the headline when there's something so important at stake that Trump is actually illuminating, and yet they're deciding, oh no, this is going to hurt Kamala. No, let's attack Donald.
Yeah. Well, it's just with everything now, mate. They've really, goes back to the consciousness point. They've pretty much lost all the remaining intelligent people on planet Earth, I would argue, to different sources of media. I mean, look at Donald this time round. He's gone on dozens of podcasts. He's going on Joe Rogan. I think that's imminent. I don't know what day it's scheduled for, but it's very soon, which I never thought that would happen because Joe's got some sort of issue with him. I'm not sure what, but I'm sure they'll get over that after their meeting. But everyone's turned to these alternative sources of information, which I find very, very positive, because I think RFK was one of the more notable figures that cut through and penetrated through short form podcasts and just backdoor media, so to speak. And he showed the profound effect that could have on the populace. There's nothing the deep state or these corrupt media companies can really do anymore. There's not, like, look to them. Well, the dumb people do, and the older generations that are still caught in their routine of,
And look, I feel for the people that I feel for the people that are stuck on MSNBC, CNN, ABC, list goes on, really, CBS. I feel for the people that do just trust headlines blindly and follow along. And, they're people that we're very familiar with. We sit at dinner tables with these people. We grew up alongside these people in the urban kind of environment, full of the kind of champagne socialist type, I would say, whose brains are polluted with this type of rhetoric. I think a concerted effort to avoid truth-seeking and instead play to an agenda. So, I do feel for these people a little bit who can't think critically. by the way, I'm not saying that everything they put out is necessarily false. I'm just saying that if you can't challenge what you're reading at any point, it's not like I'm sitting there watching Fox and Sky News and agreeing with every single headline. I just think people need to start understanding that, yeah, legacy media is heavily flawed. It's almost entirely politicized, and alternative media sources, which you referred to as backdoor media, which I loved. Alternative media is growing in strength because actually it's authentic and it's more honest. Yeah, there's some political affiliation, no doubt, but I think there is a level of kind of rawness and a refreshing nature associated, which is really terrific, and it's clearly resonating. It's clearly having an impact. Trump, this election has gone on Theo Von. He's hit 18 rounds with Bryson. Played incredible golf, by the way. Check that video out. He's done all sorts. Andrew Schultz recently, which was a great potty, and even Kamala. I think realizing that that's working, went on that Call Her Daddy podcast. By the way, in the middle of the response to Helene Paps Milton. So that was a questionable appearance, given she is in the administration. But still, it's great. It's great that alternative media is having a big impact, and it makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. But it seems like every person that endorses her loses millions of followers. Don't think you'd want to be having her on your show anytime soon.
Indeed. Should we get sipping, my friend?
It's Saucy Septh. Let's do it.
Righto. Well, for anyone that hasn't been paying attention, this is the segment that's taken the world by storm, really. So this is where I hit Nathan with a few well-known household names, and he has to decide quickly whether he would have a beer with them at the pub or not. And then after, with his table of people that he's decided to have a beer with, he has to, or a drink with, he has to decide what he would get them from the bar and how that conversation would pan out. So there's a theme this week, Natho. The theme is Business Titans. And let me hit you with the first name, which is, drumroll please, Mark Cuban.
Mark Cuban. Yeah, I definitely have a beer with him. He's got a cool story. Although he does have a seemingly strong vendetta against Trumpy.
Oh, yeah.
And doesn't seem to be super politically informed, judging from his... He went on Schultz as well, didn't he? His recent...
I believe so.
Schultz, yeah. But no, he's got a cool story. Still the owner of the Mavericks, I believe. Correct?
I think so. Not a huge NBA fan, but
no,
I think so.
Of the sport that went wayward after the BLM disaster of 2020. Yeah, I definitely have a drink with Q-Boss.
Excellent. And now we obviously there will be an Australian theme, which will be more prevalent post-US election. Excuse me, I would imagine. But Clive Palmer is one of the most well-known billionaires in Australia. For the 12 US listeners who are currently tuning in, Big Clive is a personality. He started his own political party. He made a lot of money with a piece of land in Queensland that he sold to a huge Chinese oil company. He's had his finger in a lot of pies. It's a terrible pun, actually, to associate with Big Clive. But anyway, I apologise, Clive. I respect you a lot. So, Natho, Clive Palmer.
Yeah, definitely. Did a doco on him about a year ago. I wonder how that's going. I haven't checked it on in ages, but he's suing... He's a character. He's suing the Australian federal government for $300 billion. Which is just astounding. He's gone through all the courts, Supreme Court. Now he's going to he's been to the High Court, And now he's taking it to international court. So I don't know where that sits at the moment, but I did a story on it a while ago. He'd have some serious tales to tell. He's clearly very anti conventional government. Yeah, I'm sure we'd have a lot of things in common in terms of our views. Maybe not our waistlines, but certainly our views.
Well, speaking of waistlines, the next guy is a guy we know, we know of quite well, and he's had a really really tough time of it in the Australian media landscape. He's from the biggest business dynasty Australia's ever seen. I would say that's an accurate statement, and he's doing it tough. He's had an interesting career, ups and downs, a tough personal journey too. But James Packer, Natho, would you? Not sure he's drinking, but would you have a drink with James?
Might have to have a hot chockey with Jimbo, with a couple extra marshmallows and chocolate topping. It seems the poor bastard seems very, very sick. Doesn't look good. But yeah, I'd love to sit down with him. I just think, yeah, it just seems like he's been chewed up and spat out a little bit. But yeah, hopefully he can sort it out. But all the pharmaceuticals he alluded to being on, and Ozempic and the drugs and the diet, and it's very concerning. So, I mean, I don't know where he goes from there, but I hope he somehow fixes it.
Yeah, I think
he's got the resources to do it, get his head right. But
I think all Australians, certainly want to see the next chapter of his life be a positive one, and I think it would be a terrific story if we could see a happy James Packer thriving, whatever that means with his business journey. That's clearly secondary. So, certainly sending my best wishes to JP. Nathan, to round out the list, interesting character, this guy. You may have covered him with your business stories, but he is expected to endorse a candidate in the election imminently, and I think I've got a sneaking suspicion that candidate will be a 78-year-old bloke from Florida. So Jamie Dimon is the head of JP Morgan, the US biggest investment bank, clearly extremely influential, gets huge accolades, and is considered, one of the more intellectual people in modern day finance. So I don't know what you know of Jamie, but would you get a drink with him?
I would, and I know a fair bit about him, actually. He's flip-flopped a lot on crypto, but in the background, they've been building out some of the most sophisticated rails with Ripple, XRP, and a number of others, whilst remaining quite anti-crypto for a long time. So he's playing the game, and it's no surprise I didn't know that he was potentially endorsing Trumpy. But I would certainly get a drink with him, because I'd have some very direct questions for him, because I think he's one of those chess players in the game. He may not be one of the actual players, but he's certainly one of the people on the chess board. He's probably certainly not a pawn up the front. He's might be a knight or a rook or something, but he's a big player, and I'd love to know what's about to happen. But it's only good signs if he's thinking of backing Trumpy, because where the financial sector is going to move in the next couple of years is going to blow a lot of people's minds. I don't think anyone in the broader populace can fully comprehend just how dramatic the landscape's going to shift. So hopefully it shifts for the good of the people, and sort of gives back more freedom and control over individuals' finances, and the cost of living hopefully comes down, and yeah, there's a lot of that's almost an episode in itself. What are the guys that are controlling the big banks looking to do? So yeah, I would definitely get a drink with him, 100%.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have for the first time a unanimous. Every single person that I just asked Natho whether he would have a drink with, he confirmed he would, which I don't think will be a common theme, by the way. So Natho, you have a pretty eclectic table, as it usually is, comprised Mark Cuban, James Packer, Clive Palmer, and Jamie Dimon. You're at the bar. Somehow, you're buying the first round, which is pretty stiff, I reckon. What are you getting the gentleman?
Well, Jimmy Packer's probably not on the drink, so just get him a hot chocolate. Big Clive. I think he'd like a sort of strong Queensland lager.
A 4X gold?
Maybe. I don't know my Queensland lagers very well because I'm from New South Wales, but
only just, mate. Yeah, you're right on that borderline.
I know. But he'd run with something like that. Jamie Dimon strikes me of like he'd be a fancy. I'm not a wine guy, but it'd be something fancy. It'd be maybe some sort of fancy white wine. I'd ask the barman or the bar lady what their most expensive one is and what the most well received drop is. I'd probably go with that for Jamie. And then Cuban. Oh, it would be so funny if Trumpy had his own beer label or alcohol line. I'd get him one of them, but Trumpy doesn't drink, so that doesn't work. He seems in touch with the millennials quite well. I'd get him a Happy Dad. I'd get him a Nelp Boys Happy Dad.
Yeah.
And that's the list, isn't it?
It is, mate. Well done. Another week. And again, a pretty interesting outcome. I certainly thought you'd be rejecting Mark Cuban. I certainly would. But yeah, pretty interesting group. I think that would lead to. I think you'd be quite confident on that table. Actually, I think you'd have a lot of questions for Jamie. So you might want to just shuffle him to one side of the table and let Cuban, Clive, and Packer leave them to it a bit. Watch the sport. But anyway, mate, well done. A successful little segment.
That was a fun one.
Now, I was keen, Natho. There are a couple of topical talking points before we rip into the finance and investing side of the pod. But one story I wanted to bring up, we mentioned hit pieces on Trump. Well, the Empire Strikes Back. There's been a couple of hit pieces. There's been a couple of hit pieces recently on a couple of very notable and prominent Democrat associated peeps. Foremost, Douglas Emhoff. Happy birthday, Doug. I think you turned 60 odd a couple of days ago. And as you turned 60, you were hit with allegations of pretty heinous domestic violence, some really despicable allegations, actually, which, if true, I can't believe this story hasn't received anywhere near the amount of attention I think it deserves. These claims have been backed up by several sources. The details are very specific. There's witnesses. So, and this guy also,
it's being censored by Google and traditional.
Well, that too. Which
that's the telltale sign when a story is being suppressed by your typical search engines and no one's covering it. Going back to my how do you do your own critical thinking, there's another little clue. Then you're onto something, because why is it being covered up?
Oh, clearly sensitive. It's clearly sensitive for quite powerful and high profile people. Hence, perhaps a few emails to Sergey and the team at Google to do their part. But John Doe, as we
Johnny.
broke. Yeah, Johnny. But yeah, look, Doug Emhoff, some really heinous things in his past as well. He cheated on his first wife with the nanny of his kids, got that nanny pregnant. That's horrible, really, and in my opinion, a pretty unforgivable mistake. Yet, and of course, these domestic violence allegations. He's had strong and repeated allegations of being incredibly misogynistic at his law firm, very flirtatious and inappropriate with the female staff there. So, you're looking at a guy that certainly has a pretty colourful history and a fair rap sheet, and yet, if anyone wants to do their due diligence and look at the Google results or YouTube results, Google owns YouTube, on Doug Emhoff, you will see, exemplary second gentleman, is the definition of positive modern masculinity. Headlines like that, which, you look at, not only gaslighting, but frankly, insulting to men and women, like more insulting to women than men. But this guy, if these allegations are true, just imagine the shoe was on the other foot. If anyone associated with the Trump camp was hit with these allegations, it's all you'd hear about for weeks. Game over. It is all you'd hear about. The public would also swallow this up as fact instead of actually questioning whether the allegations are true. And Doug Emhoff, of course, has the right to the assumption of innocence. But again, given his history, I think there's a really interesting story that will unfold here.
The affair and the flirting and all that stuff's been confirmed. So there's clearly there is a narrative that's not looking good for him.
No, and he's, I think I take exception to the coverage he gets, the favourable coverage. It's the same story as Kamala. A few skeletons in her closet certainly haven't come back to haunt her, because nobody wants to say a bad word of her, and clearly Doug Emhoff getting the same treatment.
Candy Owens is doing a good job of that.
Candace Owens is doing a great job, but she is very much an evil top 10 terrorist target of the legacy media. I'm sure they would brand her everything under the sun. So, but she is, and again, these alternative kind of media sources are certainly doing their best. But the Doug Emhoff story, to me, there's, and we'll talk about the Tim Waltz allegations soon as well, which are, very speculative, but worthy of discussion. But this seems to me like the Hunter Biden laptop story of this election cycle, is the Doug Emhoff allegations and the very, very colourful history there, which is being, there's an effort to quash that story and certainly undermine the accuracy of those allegations. And then the Tim Waltz saga as well, which is playing out in real time now, and very early days, but the allegations are absolutely horrific and of the most extreme nature you can imagine. So,
Hock to Tim.
Well, he's actually being labelled Touchdown Timmy, which is a pretty questionable one. But yeah, so the allegations on Waltz, again, very fresh. This is very new. So by the time the next week's episode comes on, you may or may not have heard about this. But in short, the pedophilic allegations regarding Waltz, and specifically a 14-year-old student that he went to an Indigo concert, some band.
Concert, then a gay bar, and then the kid supposedly woke up with Timmy giving him oral sex.
Yeah, so that's the allegation, and then the allegation goes on to claim that they had up to a dozen further sexual encounters after that. The child was 14. Waltz was very coercive and manipulative into making him think that he was gay, even though the kid really wasn't aware of his sexuality at the time, so he claims. And, it's a very, very serious allegation. And, again, if the shoe was on the other foot, I think this would be headline news. I think it is all you would read in the next couple of weeks. But you have to. I think there are a couple of interesting aspects to this story. So again, very speculative, unlikely to be true, I would still say. But the first is that the Waltz camp, Natho, they got out in front of this story, knowing that it was going to emerge and allegations were likely, perhaps. They got out in front and said, oh, yeah, by the way, Tim Waltz did go to this concert with a 14-year-old high school student, which is a very interesting tactic. I think you could read into that as they were quite concerned. And so they wanted to control the narrative and, basically profiled Tim as the hero who was championing the rights of gay students, even though attending a concert, which I don't believe was sanctioned by the school, with a 14-year-old student is incredibly inappropriate. In no way, in no world is that an okay thing to do. And then, of course, if the gay bar after the concert is in fact true, well, that is beyond the pale, really. But that's one interesting thing I found about this story. The other thing that's interesting is this person that's giving the information to DocNet YouTube, who's broken this story. This person clearly, it seems like the person. So it is emerging as a he said scenario, where
the critical piece is the body markings, the tattoos and the body markings. Yeah. Apparently, Timmy's got a CCC. He's got a CCP emblem on his leg. So that's one piece, and then there's a couple of scars and things that the kids described. So we ever really going to see that? I don't know.
Well, if there's wherever he is at the moment, I think Wisconsin or Michigan, one of the battleground states, if there's any laser removal or tattoo removal bloody places getting a booking from a T Waltz, then I think we know that there's something very interesting at play. But yeah, clearly if these allegations have any shred of truth and further evidence is brought to light and elucidated, this has to be a killer blow to the Harris Waltz efforts and campaign, because you can't have allegations of rape and pedophilia, which have any sort of semblance of evidence and run a campaign simultaneous. It's a killer blow in anyone's language. So it will be interesting to see if there is any evidence that comes to light, or how the Waltz camp respond if they choose to respond. Now, again, I think presumption of innocence with this story is clearly untrue until it is true. But it is interesting what facts are being or presented as potential facts are being showcased to the public. So watch this space. Next couple of days will be interesting.
It certainly will. And again, people aren't falling for the mainstream media just quashing stories anymore. So it's going to get examined deeply.
We will see, my friend. We'll see.
Going to get cherry picked and presented through all the necessary avenues until we get to the root of the root truth, which is good. Shall we move into the market segment, big fella?
Indeed, my friend. I think that is a good place to go.
Our market segment, as our 14 viewers are all too aware, is sponsored by Cashew, which is a company we're both involved in very heavily and has an amazing stock picking engine. And we're really starting to see some love for them actually the last few weeks. Lots of people getting around it, and some exceptional performing packs. Now that we've got their 3-year performance out to the general public, I'd like to just quickly touch on that, and then I want to go into some of the picks that I've been talking about for a while and how they're doing, and why you should strongly look at them if you're considering investing in the near future. But our packs that we've launched, if you didn't know already, are the Protect America pack, the Value Rebels pack, and the Cashew Hidden Gems pack, which I'll pop on screen. Cashew Hidden Gems, which is our sort of flagship, super secret sauce, proprietary algorithm. That's across all the packs, but they're not as thematic within the Cashew Hidden Gems. Is almost at 70% returns over 3 years, which is exceptional. It's compared to the S&P 500, that's outperforming it by nearly 50%. So really, really special stuff. And we're just super pleased to be able to give that now to retail investors. You know, Wall Street's all too rigged against the majority of retail investors. So that's our MO, giving you guys the technology to actually see what really good picks are based on not just human research and intuition, following what the central banks are doing, the top 1% of the world, your Buffetts and et cetera, but applying a really, really powerful machine learning algorithm to our processes. So that's our main one, but within Value Rebels and Protect America, also really high performing, 43% and 38% respectively. And that is within our premium offering within our app. So link in the description below to get free trial access to our product, and you'll be able to see inside one pack for 2 weeks to test it out. And let us know how you go and what you think. And then hopefully you stay on as a paid user, because they're doing really, really well for a lot of people, which we're super pumped about. But more to the point, some items I've been talking about for a while. I might just touch on 2 in particular out of my 4. And you can get these, by the way, also linked in just in the description, my free ebook, where I go through 4 free investment ideas for you guys to look into and consider that are essentially recession proof, in my opinion. I've done a truck ton of research into these for the last couple of years. And no matter how this election goes, no matter what really happens, these are pretty safe bets. The first of which you've probably heard of before, but I'd like to give some reasoning behind, is gold and silver. Gold, mainly, you can read this in the ebook, but it doesn't get affected by inflation. And what I mean by that is, I did a video a little while ago explaining how 8 solid gold bars would buy you a house, your typical average house back in the 1920s. And 8 gold bars would also buy you a equivalent house in today. So it's anti-inflationary. It means that you're basically appreciating in lockstep with inflation, which is always going to safeguard your wealth. Now, you can get in on that through certain ETFs, which you can look into, or you can just buy it physically through bullion dealers. But the ETF might be an easier option to get easy exposure to the commodity. And then silver's a really good one, because silver's obviously not as expensive. And before I move on, gold's the appreciation in gold, all-time high right now. We'll pop on screen the prices and its appreciation recently. The last 6 months since I wrote the ebook, I believe we are up around 12%. I just want to double check that real quick, because gold is up 12% and silver is up 9%. And silver is really interesting, not just because of its use cases in a lot of consumer electronics, but where the EV space and robotics space is heading with batteries and more efficient batteries. Silver is heavily linked to far superior battery life and charge rates, and their applications within these spaces are only going to significantly increase. So keep that in mind. Gold as well. Very likely the financial system may move back to a gold-backed standard to curb the debt crisis. That is a bit of a rabbit hole in itself, but you should look into that. That's namely why China and Russia have been accumulating gold and silver at such astronomical rates the last 5 to 10 years, but in particular the last 5 years. So I strongly urge you to really consider looking into that, those two, getting your head around them. And then the only other one, which I won't tell you about all of them, but this defense stock narrative, which we've touched on a few times, Jacko, I think is well worth reiterating, because likelihood is Trump will get in. We're not going to say it's a guarantee, but since we first started talking about this about 4 or 5 months ago, and I find this exceptional, Lockheed Martin, which was one of my picks back then, is now up. I mean, its chart is ridiculous. We'll pop it on screen here. It's like an invincible stock. Lockheed Martin is up 33% in the last 6 months, which it's already valued, or it's now valued at $605. So it's a pretty expensive stock. And you look at the chart on this thing, and there is no dip. It's just literally this beautiful one-sided triangle that just keeps going up, 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 up. Now, the reason we keep bringing this up is because no matter what happens, whether we go into World War III with the Dems and we go down the shit can, or Trump gets in and buffs up defense spending and builds the Iron Dome, and defense contracts are going through the wazoo, but more from a protectionary standpoint, we're going to see these big boys keep going up. You're not, in my opinion, you're not going to lose money. You're just not. They might not go up as fast as your Nvidias or whatever, but I mean, 33% in 6 months is pretty damning. Lockheed Martin is one of those giants that are just entangled within global defense contracts. You know, they've got heavy ties to Israel. They're tied to all the wars. They build some of the most advanced technology there is. They were a big part of the Iron Dome built in Israel. So if Trumpy's going to be building an Iron Dome, any defense stock that's closely associated to the build of those critical infrastructures and missile defense systems are going to directly benefit them. So worth pointing that out again. Defense, gold, silver, and then there's a few others. The other one in there is, of course, the India. India is an emerging market, and the ETFs that are going over there. And I thought, Jacko, you mentioned you want to maybe talk about that a little bit, and I think it's really relevant because they too, the Nifty 50, has had a huge year, and the last 6 months it's up 12%. So maybe you'd like to speak a little bit about that and any other market-related sentiments that you want to share with the audience.
Yeah, thanks, Nathan. Great insights on the investing opportunities from you. I think, again, finger on the pulse, very astute. Nifty 50 ETF, I've been really interested in. Actually, more generally, just the rise of India, almost the inevitable, imminent rise of the Indian middle class. I think it will echo and perhaps exceed the rise of the Chinese middle class, which we saw obviously early 2000s, early 2010s, and was a meteoric surge. India's success, I really do think is a banker. I think it's the kind of $1.05 favorite. India is bound and destined to become a global giant. It seems like prosperity just continues there, and I just think that if you pay attention to India's rise and the companies that will be responsible for what will inevitably be a huge growth period in that country's history, then you're likely to win. So Yeah, certainly an India ETF, or specifically if you want to cherry pick the best Indian stocks. I think that's a really interesting path to go down. India also, by the way, politically play a very good game of keeping everyone happy. No one. It doesn't seem likely that the US and India relationship will fracture, no matter who wins the election, which is very positive. India seemingly has a good relationship with China as well. So they're keeping the big dogs very happy, ensuring and enabling a prosperous pathway for themselves. Now, I think cashew, in a matter of time, it won't be that long, hopefully, but we'll have a stock pack for India. I don't know what the name will be, maybe India Rising, but there will be a cashew stock pack with the most undervalued Indian stocks that they expect will rise substantially as the country continues to prosper. So I would very much watch out for that, Natho. I think banking on the success of India is a very good strategy. And yeah, again, I think protect America, the defense stocks that thrive in America, again, regardless of election result, is a very safe play. I think the one new item I'd add to the agenda, just in alignment with recent polling, betting data indicating that Trump's chances are quite strong. The one thing I would add to the pile is the oil stocks, the drill baby drill stocks that I think would thrive very, very shortly after a Trump election, or probably before. If the momentum continues, I think stocks will be factored in quite quickly over the next couple of weeks. So, yeah, watch out for those oil stocks that thrive to do quite well under DJT.
Exxon, Chevron,
that's right. Yeah,
Buffett, always important to reiterate. Buffett's super cash heavy at the moment. He's taken so much money out of the markets because of the uncertainty, but he has kept a lot of money in those stocks. So, you got to follow what the top 1% do. And that's what we're doing.
So, Nathan, that rounds up my summary. And then the only thing I would add to that pile is consistent with my advice every week, is that I think, again, with Trump doing seemingly quite well, Bitcoin, looks like a good little pick to have your kind of 1, 2, 3% allocation there. I think, again, his affiliation with the crypto community specifically currently, he's launching his own coin that is affiliated with World Liberty Finance. Comes out in a matter of days now, which will be very interesting to see their white paper and what they're actually up to. But
it will be very interesting because it's only available to accredited investors.
That's right.
At this stage, but I have sneaky suspicions that it could be quite powerful. It could even have ties to Ripple. We don't know enough yet.
No.
But there's something brewing there for sure.
Yeah, I'd keep an eye on that because, obviously unprecedented territory if a president has part ownership of a cryptocurrency token and is in office, I think you might want to keep tabs on that. So that's quite interesting. Yeah, Bitcoin, again, I think Trump will really look to the national, he'll look to stockpile Bitcoin and really make sure that America is a pioneer and a world leader in terms of utilizing Bitcoin and ensuring potentially its value pathway. So yeah, Nathan, that basically rounds it up. But I'm excited by India. I think the stock packs that Cashew will produce over the next weeks, months to come will be really exciting and on point from a thematic standpoint. The valuation, the proprietary valuation technology which Cashew has access to, which is ultimately behind the stock picks is proven now beyond to a level that's really beyond incredible. So I think anything the stock packs come up with, they pick the right theme, they give you the most undervalued stocks according to a successful algorithm. Watch out for those. get your hands on those. There'll be a discount code in the description, I believe, Natho, and that might just round it up, my friend.
Yeah, absolutely. Hope everyone enjoyed this one. We're keen to be back every week now, and yeah, interesting times. Let's see how the next few weeks unfold. It's juicy, very, very juicy. But until then, catch you in the next one.
See you guys.